What's the weirdest thing you've ever gotten a DNA profile from?
Well, that's actually easy. And a Cheeto. So I actually analyzed a Cheeto from a crime scene. It was a burglary case. The burglar came in, couldn't help himself, munched down, and we swabbed that. Got a nice DNA profile. We're able to put it in CODIS, which is a national database, and we're able to get a hit on the perpetrator. So Cassie, have you ever seen a 3D printed gun?
Yes, I have. We actually recently had one in the last couple months. It was fully 3D printed except the metal slide of the firearm and the components inside the slide. So it had no markings as far as make, manufacturer, model, no serial number. Everything was 3D printed, including the magazine, but it did fully function, and it actually was a fully automatic firearm.
So I was going to ask you, so it can still be used in a crime?
Absolutely. It will get entered and test fired into our NIBIN database, just like any other test fired firearm. So it was fully functioning. We test fired it not only in semi-auto, but fully automatic. So we can determine and be able to state that during testimony. So.
And as far as 3D printing goes, don't you guys sometimes have a 3D printed, it's called an auto sear, that actually makes a regular gun fully automatic?
Yeah, so the 3D printed auto sear is actually more common in a rifle, like an AR-15 style rifle. And it drops into the inner workings of the frame. Versus on a pistol, the most common one we see is a 3D printed piece that goes on the back side of the slide, which is on Glock firearms. And that converts those to fully automatic. But again, yes, can be 3D printed.
And I know I've had to swab a few of those for DNA, and
Yes.
I'm always amazed, and it's very interesting seeing all that stuff that they can do on a 3D printer. So.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a little scary. Sometimes they smell like a little plasticky when we fire them, just because that's what they're made out of. But they pretty much function just like they normally would if they were manufactured by a company. Sometimes wear and tear can make things break a little faster, but they can only need one to get rid of a crime. So.
How long does it take to finish a case? Is it fast, like CSI?
Well, it kind of depends on the case, how much evidence we're receiving for that case, and what that evidence is. If it's as simple as receiving some swabs, we can cut it and go. If we're receiving evidence like bed sheets or clothing where we have to screen or process those items for body fluids, it could take us a long time, especially if we're also swabbing additional items of evidence too. That can take a while.
So we're not getting a case done in 24 hours?
Well, I think it'd be possible to do a case in 24 hours, especially if it was one of those cut and go cases I mentioned.
Okay.
So, Rachel, how did you decide to become a forensic scientist?
It's actually thanks to this department. When I was in middle school, there was a school resource officer that set up a mock crime scene for my class. And I had no idea at that time that people could solve crimes for a living. I thought that was really neat. This is kind of before CSI really blew up. And I sort of latched on to the idea of forensic science and literally never wavered from that. So about 10 years old on,
Very cool.
this was really neat. And then when I became an employee here, I actually now became the coworker of that school resource officer. And I don't know, it was nice to see that full circle.
I remember when you started, you reached out to him and said, hey, I'm working with you now. I thought that was pretty cool. And I know he appreciated that.
He did. Phenomenal guy, and I thank him for putting me on this path.
Yeah, and part of that path was also, you did an internship here as well during a summer, didn't you?
I did. My undergraduate, I was about halfway through getting my bachelor's degrees, and you were kind enough to give me an internship, and that solidified, definitely, this is what I want to do.
Well, I'm going to up you one, and I'm going to go back to the 70s for my story about how I became a forensic scientist or became interested in forensic science. I was in Colorado with my family in June of 1977, and we were near the Continental Divide, and there was a roadblock. The police were there searching vehicles. So to get by, you had to stop, get out of the car, and let them search your trunk and the inside of your vehicle. didn't know what they were doing exactly. Heard on the news later that night that they were looking for Ted Bundy, who's almost, unfortunately, a household name, even at this point, 40 years after the fact. But he had escaped from prison, and they were looking for him. So once I found that out, it piqued my interest in, well, how did this guy get caught, and what evidence do they have against him? And, discovered forensic science and how science can tie people to crime scenes and different things like that. So in a sense, I've never looked back from that. And that's kind of how I got my interest. And this was way before, CSI TV shows or anything like that. About the only show on TV at that time that did anything with forensic science or toxicology or anything was Quincy as a medical examiner. So yeah, kind of a different story than yours, but still it starts with an interest in science and saying how it can, help solve crimes and help public safety.
And then we get hooked.
Exactly.
So, Rachel, have you ever made methamphetamine?
Nope, but I have made crack cocaine.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to give me that look. When drug chemists are just off their training, they've been working a little while, they get sent to a DEA training seminar in Virginia. We're out there for a week learning the nuts and bolts of drug analysis, anything from growing to manufacturing to distributing to analysis. And part of that involved making our own crack.
What happened to the crack after you made it?
So we made it two ways. One was on a hot plate and one was in the microwave in some Tupperware, and the Tupperware melted. So our professor opened the microwave and went, nope, and closed it. And then we went back to class. So I don't know. They might have pitched the whole microwave.
Sounds like a wise decision.
It doesn't smell great when you're making it.
I can't imagine it does.